The Constitutional Hill Human Rights Festival is back on the weekend of the 25th and the 26th of this month. Gates to this free festival open at 10 a.m. with the programs running well into the evening. Now, the festival explores human rights issues through music, poetry, literature, and visual arts. Joining us now to tell us more about the festival is Dawn Robinson, Constitutional Hill CEO, and Isobel Frye, Director at the Studies in Poverty and Inequality Institute. A warm welcome to both our guests, and thank you so much for joining us on our platform this morning. Dawn, I'd like to start with you. This is the 5th edition of the festival, and last year, I actually had the privilege of moderating one of the conversations that were had there. There was a lot of excitement post-COVID-19 of being able to have warm bodies back at Con Hill. Talk to us about this year's excitement and the theme, Seize Your Power.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for having us on the show this morning. So yes, we're back for a full-bodied Human Rights Festival, the 5th. We're very proud that we've made it this far with this new concept we came up with. Yes, the theme is Seize the Power, and just listening to the clip before we started this interview of the President, he kind of hit the nail on the head for us, because it's really about bridging that gap between civil society and the NGO sector as well as government. So key to this year's festival, which is a little bit different from previous years, is that we really have elevated the dialogues, the debates, the discussion, and we've developed a very, very full program of conversations, whether they're dialogues, workshops, panel discussions around key issues that are impacting society today. And the underlying message is really about seize your power. Because us as citizens, if we do what we can make a difference. And so we have got a number of civil society organizations. I think we've got almost 80 civil society, social justice organizations, civil society organizations, civil movements that are participating with a full program of dialogues, 2 big debates that we're having on Saturday. We're going to be looking at the issue of the elections next year and why we should register to vote. And on Sunday, we're looking at the climate crisis. So big conversations that are happening with very high-hitting panel discussions. And we really want to encourage everybody to come to the festival and to be there with us. And we've still got our Artivism program, as we call it, which is the film festival, the poetry festival, the live stage with artists like BCUC and Misaki. And we've got an amazing children's section this year. So really, it's a fun day out. And what I love about the Human Rights Festival compared to other festivals we host at Constitution Hill, this is the one where you see babies in prams all the way through to kind of older people in their 80s and 90s that come to this festival because they're interested. So it's a really great festival for the whole family to come out and make a difference at.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Isobel, I think the festival also comes at a very interesting time for South Africa. Just thinking about even the present day context, right? We have this massive national shutdown that's been planned for tomorrow. The issues being, highlighted are social justice issues, issues that speak to the lives and the realities, the lived experiences of the poorest of the poor in South Africa. I want to get a sense from you is about, festivals like the Human Rights Festival play a critical role in educating South Africans to keep them aware and vigilant, because our social justice issues, one would argue, are being co-opted by a lot of these political organizations to further their own political agendas.
Good morning. That's an incredibly complex question and one that's really important, I think, for all South Africans to unpack and understand. The context, of course, of Human Rights Day goes back to Sharpeville, and for many of my generation, that's a very clear memory. The youth, people of my daughter's generation, don't have that. So for me, the challenge, as articulated in your question, is how do we, with that knowledge, translate that into a message that is appropriate and speaks to the next generation's own concerns. The fact that we live in the most unequal country in the world, and yet we claim a human rights agenda, is also troubling. We're having the festival that Dawn and her colleagues have organized at Constitution Hill. We know that the Constitution is the most progressive in the world. and yet how does it manage to coexist with the state of inequality where more than half the people live in poverty? And I think for me that is the challenge of the translation of the message, and that's why the Human Rights Festival is such an amazing celebration, because it brings in diverse modalities of communication, the arts, the dialogues, etc., keeping the communication open. I want to also just reflect on what you were saying about the political parties. I was thinking how interesting it was. I was at the ANC consultation yesterday at City Hall in Johannesburg, and that's one situation of one political party reaching out and hearing voices. On Monday, we have the EFF giving people the opportunity to be on the streets, to voice demands, etc., etc. And yet both of those are invited spaces. So people are invited into the space to support the agenda or to raise matters for the agenda. And how do we own our own message is important. And that's why the movie that I think we're going to talk about is just, for me, so important, because what comes through is putting ideology aside. How do we, what are the values that we embrace? And for us, it's really about decency, because that's linked to dignity in the Constitution. So how do people say to political parties, if you want my vote next year, what are you doing to ensure that everybody has access to a decent and equal life in South Africa?
You know, Dawn, oftentimes, especially in the debate forums that are available, readily available for anyone who comes to the Human Rights Festival to experience and to engage with, there's this one question that comes up quite often, and it really speaks to the sort of dissociative feeling that a lot of South Africans have when it comes to the Constitution. The feeling as though the Constitution no longer speaks to their lives, to their needs, and is a very distant document, really, for them. What role does the festival itself play in trying to, you know, kind of bring about that reconnection to this document?
Yeah, I think we've tried to make the conversation speak to that issue. But if I can extend it to the work that we do at Constitution Hill and the work that we do with our Constitution Hill Trust, that is really about translating the Constitution. And we translate right down to young kids with the programs that we run, for example, at Play Africa, where young kids are taught about the Constitution. We've got programs which we've developed with them for, you know, all levels of school-going children, and we've got programs that run into the schools constantly. So, yes, it's a very pertinent question. It's one that is essential to the work that we're doing, and it's one that we're trying to infuse into every aspect of the festival. Yeah.
Well, when we talk about the aspects of the festival, you mentioned how there's all kinds of things available to people who will be a part of it. You know, there's the visual arts element, there's the music, there's the entertainment. You have a documentary that's being flighted. Isobel, I know that this is a cause that is very close to your own heart, and that has to do with the 350 Rands SRD grant and the conversations that opened up, the opportunities that opened up for South Africa to introduce its own income, basic income grant. Talk to us a little bit more about the documentary and what you're hoping, viewers of it will learn and take away.
Absolutely. The organization that I run, Frye, is a research organization. What our theory of change is that by bringing more research to the table, leaders will be able to make better decisions. But we've realized that that is an empty premise if you don't have people's voices in it, people who are directly affected by the deficit, by the poverty that we live with in South Africa, and we see growing daily with the unemployment. Now, in many other countries, what sustains many people is social security, enough benefits to get on by. Now, in South Africa, the act that guides our social security is premised on apartheid, really. So there's no assistance for working age people, because the assumption was that the white welfare state that was apartheid would always ensure employment. So for us, the 350 grant really is the door that opens to addressing the universal basic income grant, which is, again, something that we've done a lot of research on. We've shown how it's affordable. We've shown how tax rates have decreased so significantly for the corporate sector, which is one of the prime areas of funding. But we didn't have people telling their own stories. So we partnered with UNICEF, which has a very strong universal mandate around universalism, and said, let's explore the 350 grant and what were the real positive things it brought, and what were the questions that are still to be open. So we follow the lives of 5 beneficiaries and hear their stories about how they applied for the grant, how it was so transformative, and then when it was taken away, the kind of shock to the household system. And we have talking heads, including the Minister of Social Development and other researchers who have just finished a project for her, which talk about, and they provide the evidence that shows that if we're talking about transformation in this country, the one thing that we are never talking about sufficiently is the thread that binds us together. And the thread that binds us together is the sufficiency of income. So we're very privileged to have had people open their homes to us to tell their stories. The filmmaker Delise Moabi spent a lot of time just sitting and talking to people. And the film, which is going to be screened for the first time on Saturday afternoon, really is testimony to the fact that there is hope in this country, even though we feel that we are being attacked on all sides, that if leadership listens to the voices of people directly affected, there's such a wealth of wisdom in that. And we've learned a huge amount about how the truth really gets presented to power. And it's not through fancy words and smart submissions. It's about enabling the voices of the poor to come through.
No, absolutely. I love that last bit that you said about enabling the voices, and that's really at the heart of this festival, right, Dawn? Right alongside the theme of Seize Your Power. This is very critical, given the fact that we are heading into these general elections next year. South Africans need to feel empowered. They need to feel as though, their voice matters, it's heard, and I suppose most importantly, their vote counts, which is a right enshrined in the Constitution as well. Dawn?
Sorry, yeah, exactly. And that's a central theme as well to the festival, so around the festival there are many conversations happening about why we should register for vote, why it's important, why the vote can make a significant change, and particularly conversations addressing young people. And in fact, the big debate on Saturday is really looking at that one from different positions as well. And we've also had the IEC come on board in a big way. So they're going to be out there in full first force as well, registering young people to vote. So yes, this is a key part of the message of the festival, particularly for this particular year. And it's one that we're going to be pushing throughout the festival, be it on the stage, be it within the dialogues, in the movies that we're showing, as well as in the theatre pieces.
All right. Well, I want to thank both our guests for joining us this morning. Dawn Robinson, CEO at Constitutional Hill, and Isobel Frye.